Hey everyone, this is Six Path Weeb, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into part 2 of one of our most intriguing fanfic scenarios yet. What if Naruko was secretly married to Sasuke? The story takes a deeper turn here, with hidden emotions, untold truths, and consequences that could change everything in the ninja world. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer: this content is created purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not own any anime footage used. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, without wasting any time, let's get into the story. Hinata Hyuga was just entering the hospital, her steps soft and careful. She had come earlier with her father, hoping to visit Naruto Uzumaki, whom everyone had begun affectionately calling Naruko. Hinata wanted to make sure she was feeling better. Flashback. Hinata and her father, Hisashi Hyuga, walked together toward the hospital. They both had the same purpose: to see Naruko. Hisashi wished to thank her for helping Neji rediscover kindness and balance, while Hinata simply wanted to check on someone very dear to her heart. When the Hyuga clan heard about Naruko's injury, many were quietly concerned. Even those who rarely showed emotion acknowledged her courage and the positive changes she had inspired. At the front desk, Hisashi spoke calmly, "I would like to know the room number of Naruko Uzumaki." The receptionist replied gently, "The Hokage has requested that Naruko rest without visitors for now. You will need special permission." Hisashi nodded and turned toward the Hokage tower to seek approval. Hinata, however, stayed behind, her thoughts racing. She wanted to see Naruko, just for a moment. End flashback. Determined but kind-hearted, Hinata came up with a simple plan. She returned to the hospital lobby carrying a neatly wrapped box of fresh-baked sweets. "Excuse me," she said softly, "these are for the hospital staff." The receptionist smiled warmly. "That's very thoughtful of you." As the staff gathered to enjoy the treats, Hinata quietly slipped away, not causing trouble, just taking advantage of a brief moment when no one was watching closely. She found the directory and located Naruko's room, 213, West Wing. With careful steps, Hinata walked down the quiet hallway. She peeked inside the room and saw Naruko resting peacefully. Her golden hair framed her face, and even in sleep, she looked full of gentle determination. Hinata smiled softly. "Naruko. I'm glad you're okay," she whispered. She didn't stay long. Just being there for a moment was enough. She turned and left quietly, her heart feeling lighter. Outside, two watchful Anbu guards noticed her but simply exchanged knowing glances. "She really cares about her," one said quietly. The other nodded. And Naruko could use someone like that. The next day, Naruko had been discharged and was now standing in the town square. She felt a little uneasy under the many watchful eyes, but she stood tall anyway. She had made up her mind: she would keep moving forward, no matter what. Nearby, members of the Hyuga clan observed her thoughtfully. Hisashi spoke to the elders: "She has brought change where we could not. Strength, not just in skill, but in heart." They all agreed silently. Across the square, Kakashi Hatake watched Naruko as well. He felt a quiet determination to support her better in the future. Naruko took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. No matter what came next, she would face it with courage, and maybe, just maybe, with friends by her side. And somewhere not far away, Hinata smiled, believing in her. With Sasuke. Sasuke stood quietly, his arms folded as he watched the blonde girl from afar. Naruko had grown stronger, faster, and more determined than ever before. He frowned slightly, not out of anger, but because he couldn't quite understand how she always managed to surprise him. "She's really something," he muttered to himself, though a small, reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "I just have to keep working hard too." He turned toward the tall Hokage tower, determination settling into his eyes. Whatever came next, he would face it in his own way. At the Hokage's tower. A gentle breeze swept across the village as people gathered in front of the Hokage tower. There was a quiet sense of curiosity in the air. In a soft flash of light, Minato and Kushina appeared at the top of the tower. The villagers looked up in amazement. Minato stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "People of the village," he began, "there is something important we must share today." The crowd listened closely. "Many years ago, during a difficult time, we made a choice to protect everyone here. That choice was not easy. But it was made with love." Naruko stood among the crowd, her bright eyes watching carefully. She wasn't sure why, but something about this moment felt important. Minato continued, "The strength that saved this village lives in someone very special. He paused, then gently pointed toward Naruko. Our daughter, Naruko, has carried that strength all along. A soft murmur spread through the crowd. People looked at Naruko with surprise, then slowly, understanding. Kushina stepped forward, her eyes warm and full of kindness. She has always been brave, even when things were hard. And we are so proud of her. Naruko blinked, unsure what to say. For a long moment, she simply stood there. Me? She said quietly. Minato smiled gently. Yes, Naruko. You. Naruko's choice. Naruko scratched the back of her head, feeling a little overwhelmed. That's a lot to take in, she admitted. But I've always done my best. Not because of anything special, just because I wanted to. She looked around at the villagers. Some smiled shyly. Others nodded, as if realizing something they hadn't before. Naruko took a deep breath. I'm still me, she said with a small grin. And I'm going to keep doing my best, because that's what I do. Kushina wiped a happy tear from her eye. Minato nodded proudly. Later that day. Back in her cozy apartment, Naruko sat by the window with a warm bowl of ramen. It had been a long day, but something felt different now, lighter, somehow. A gentle knock came at the door. Naruko walked over and opened it. Standing there were 3 familiar faces. Kurenai smiled kindly. Naruko, we just wanted to check on you. Tsunade crossed her arms, though her expression was soft. You've grown into quite the strong young lady. Hinata peeked shyly from behind them, offering a small wave. I hope you're okay. Naruko looked at them, then smiled warmly. Yeah. I think I am. She stepped aside. Come in. The room soon filled with quiet conversation and gentle laughter. And for the first time in a long while, Naruko didn't feel alone. Ending note. From that day on, Naruko continued her journey, not just as someone with great strength, but as someone who brought people together with her kindness, courage, and bright spirit. And no matter what challenges came her way, she faced them with a smile. Because that's just who she was. A week later, Kurenai finally shared the new team arrangements with Naruko. She crossed her arms and gave a small huff when she heard the news. Her old team had been dissolved, though she wasn't sure she could truly call it a team in the first place. Still, she was curious about what lay ahead. She was told to meet her new teammates at Training Ground 12 at noon. Wanting a quiet morning, Naruko woke up early and avoided the busy streets. Instead of visiting any shops, she found a sturdy tree near the training ground and rested there, watching the leaves sway gently in the breeze. By the time the sun climbed high in the sky, she was ready. Soon, she noticed someone stepping into the clearing. It was Hinata. Naruko smiled and leapt lightly down from the tree, landing softly on the grass. Hey, Hinata, she called. Hinata flinched slightly, surprised by the sudden greeting. Hello. Naruko, she replied softly, her voice almost carried away by the wind. Naruko tilted her head, noticing how quiet Hinata seemed. She had always been shy, but today there was something more, something heavy in her expression. As Naruko watched, a single tear slipped down Hinata's cheek. Without hesitation, Naruko reached into her pocket, pulled out a neatly folded handkerchief, and gently wiped the tear away. Her movements were careful and kind. I don't like seeing anyone sad, Naruko said warmly, offering a soft, reassuring smile. Hinata blinked in surprise. Her cheeks turned pink, and for a moment she didn't know what to say. But then, slowly, a small smile appeared on her face, her first in many days. It felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Naruko stepped back and stretched her arms, glancing up at the trees. Looks like we're early, she said casually, though her eyes still held that gentle kindness. High above them, hidden among the branches, Kurenai watched quietly alongside Yakumo Kurama. Well, Yakumo, Kurenai whispered, what do you think? Yakumo observed the 2 girls below, her gaze thoughtful. I think this team has a chance, she said softly. But only if they learn to believe in themselves, and in each other. Kurenai nodded, her expression filled with quiet determination. She had chosen these 3 not because they were perfect, but because she believed in what they could become. With patience, care, and understanding, they would grow stronger, not just in skill, but in heart. Back in the clearing, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves again. Naruko looked toward Hinata and gave her an encouraging grin. Let's do our best, okay? She said. Hinata nodded, holding that small smile close, as if it were something precious. And under the warm midday sun, a new team, and a new friendship, began to take root. Hiyashi Hyuga carefully sorted through stacks of old documents, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. Somewhere among these papers was a form given to him by Minato many years ago. That single document could change everything. It could show Naruko the truth, that she was not alone, and never had been. He paused, closing his eyes for a moment. For so long, Naruko had believed she was simply an unwanted orphan. That belief had built a wall around her heart, making it hard for her to trust anyone. If only I could find it, Hiyashi murmured softly. Around him, members of the Hyuga household searched as well, carefully checking files and records. Yet despite their efforts, the document remained hidden. Hiyashi glanced at a framed picture on the wall, his expression softening. If only things had gone as we once hoped, he whispered quietly. Elsewhere in the village, Sasuke sat with a scroll open in his hands. The symbols written inside were complex, and he was trying his best to understand them. Nearby, Kakashi sat unusually still and quiet, lost in his own thoughts. He held a scroll close, as if it were something very important. Sasuke glanced at him, puzzled. Things had felt different lately. Ever since the truth about Naruko had begun to surface, many people had started paying more attention to her. It left Sasuke feeling uncertain, though he could not quite explain why. He returned his focus to the scroll, determined to improve through his own effort. In the Hokage's office, Minato sat at his desk, reading through papers, though his mind was elsewhere. He let out a quiet sigh. I just want to speak with her, he said softly to himself. For days, he had been trying to find the right way to reach Naruko. He did not want to force her to accept anything. He only wanted a chance to be part of her life. Pressing a button on his desk, he spoke gently, please ask Naruko to come see me. After a brief pause, a voice replied, of course. Minato folded his hands and looked toward the window. I hope she will listen, he said quietly. At the village gates, visitors from another land arrived, bringing with them a sense of excitement. Tamari walked forward with a bright smile, clearly pleased to be there. Her siblings, Gaara and Kankuro, followed, exchanging curious glances at her cheerful mood. I think this will be a wonderful day, Tamari said happily. Her brothers nodded, though they were still unsure what she was planning. Not far away, Naruko sat beneath a tree, holding a scroll in her hands. She studied it carefully, though reading was still difficult for her. Kurenai watched from nearby, her expression filled with concern and kindness. After a moment, she walked over and knelt beside Naruko. Would you like some help? She asked gently. Naruko shook her head, her voice quiet. I'll manage. Kurenai did not argue. Instead, she stayed beside her, offering silent support. Naruko stared at the page, trying her best to understand each word. Though it was hard, she did not give up. Just then, a messenger appeared nearby. Lady Naruko, they said respectfully, the Hokage has asked to see you. Naruko hesitated for a moment, then slowly stood. All right, she replied. As she began walking toward the Hokage tower, Kurenai watched her go, hoping that this meeting might bring something good. High above the village, the Hokage office windows reflected the warm afternoon light. And for the first time in a long while, there was a quiet hope that hearts, once distant, might begin to understand each other again. Time skip. Hokage office. The Hokage office was filled with a quiet sense of anticipation. Minato Namikaze stood near his desk, calmly reviewing a scroll, though his thoughts were clearly elsewhere. Beside him, Kushina Uzumaki paced gently, her expression troubled. I still don't understand this decision, Minato, Kushina said, her voice firm but controlled. We want Naruko to trust us. Not feel pushed away. Minato sighed softly, setting the scroll aside. I know, Kushina. This isn't easy for me either. But this agreement could help keep peace between villages. Sometimes, being Hokage means making difficult choices. Kushina crossed her arms, her gaze softening just a little. I just don't want her to feel like she's being treated unfairly again. Before Minato could reply, there was a polite knock on the door. Enter, he called. A secretary stepped in and bowed slightly. Yondaime-sama, the Suna delegation has arrived. Minato nodded. Please send them in. Moments later, 3 visitors entered, Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara. Tamari offered a respectful smile. Greetings, Yondaime-sama. We are ready to begin whenever you are. Minato gave a welcoming nod, But just as he was about to speak, the office door swung open with a sudden burst of energy. All eyes turned toward the entrance. There stood Naruko Uzumaki. Her bright eyes scanned the room with curiosity and confidence. Before she could say anything, Tamari rushed forward with a cheerful laugh and gave her an enthusiastic hug. Naruko. It's been so long. Naruko blinked in surprise, her cheeks turning slightly pink. Ah, Tamari, hello. Could you let go for a moment? Tamari laughed and stepped back. Sorry about that. Naruko adjusted her jacket and walked toward the desk, her posture straight and respectful. You called for me, Hokage-sama? Minato smiled gently. Yes, Naruko. Thank you for coming. We were just discussing an important agreement between Konoha and Suna. Naruko tilted her head. What kind of agreement? Kushina stepped forward, her voice calm but careful. Both villages want to strengthen their bond. One idea suggested is a partnership between two shinobi from each village. Naruko thought for a moment. That sounds important. But what does it have to do with me? Minato exchanged a glance with Kushina before answering softly, Naruko. The proposal is for you to be part of that partnership. There was a brief pause. Naruko blinked once, processing the words. Then she took a slow breath. I see, she said quietly. The room grew still, waiting for her reaction. Naruko looked at Minato and Kushina, her expression thoughtful rather than angry. I wish I had been included in this discussion earlier, she said honestly. This is a big decision. And I would like to understand it fully before agreeing to anything. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of vulnerability beneath it. Kushina's eyes softened. That's completely fair, Naruko. Minato nodded. You deserve to have your voice heard. This is not something we want to force on you. Naruko crossed her arms lightly, thinking. If this is about building peace, then I want to help. That's always been my goal. She paused, then added, but I also want to make choices that feel right to me. Gaara stepped forward slightly, offering a small, understanding smile. That's a wise way to see it. True cooperation comes from mutual respect. Naruko smiled back at him. Thank you. Tamari placed a hand on her hip, grinning. Looks like we'll be working together one way or another. Naruko chuckled softly. I'd like that. The tension in the room eased, replaced by a sense of possibility. Minato looked at Naruko with quiet pride. We can take our time with this. What matters most is that we move forward with trust. Naruko nodded. Then let's start by talking openly. That's the best way to build anything strong. And in that moment, the Hokage office no longer felt heavy with pressure, but bright with hope for the future. Minato and Kushina stood quietly, their hearts full of worry. They had made mistakes in the past, and the weight of them lingered in the room like a heavy cloud. Before them stood their daughter, Naruko, her golden hair catching the light as she crossed her arms. Naruko had grown strong and independent, but she also carried a deep longing to be understood. She took a slow breath and looked at them, her eyes bright, not with anger, but with determination. Please, she said softly, stop pretending everything is fine. I just want honesty. Kushina stepped forward, her voice trembling. Naruko. We never meant for you to feel alone. We thought we were protecting you. Naruko shook her head gently. I don't need protection like that. I need you to trust me. And to stand with me. Minato placed a reassuring hand on Kushina's shoulder before speaking. You're right. We should have listened sooner. We're sorry, Naruko. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then Naruko's expression softened. She hadn't wanted distance, only understanding. I'm still figuring things out, she admitted. But I want us to be a family. A real one. Kushina smiled through her tears and carefully wrapped Naruko in a warm hug. This time, Naruko didn't pull away. She returned the embrace, closing her eyes as she felt the comfort she had missed for so long. Outside the office, a gentle breeze moved through the village, carrying the sounds of laughter and life. Among the visitors nearby was Tamari, who had been quietly observing everything. She had always admired Naruko's strength, not just her abilities, but her heart. Tamari remembered the first time they met. It had been a bright afternoon. Tamari had been walking through the village marketplace, feeling a little out of place in the bustling crowd. Suddenly, she stumbled when her sandal caught on a loose stone. Before she could fall, someone reached out and steadied her. Careful there, Naruko said with a cheerful grin. Tamari blinked in surprise. Oh. Thank you. Naruko scratched the back of her head. No problem. This place can get a bit chaotic sometimes. Are you visiting? Tamari nodded. Yes. I'm still getting used to everything. Well, Naruko said, her eyes sparkling, then you should definitely try the dengo here. It's the best. Tamari couldn't help but smile. There was something about Naruko, something bright and genuine, that made the world feel lighter. From that day on, Tamari often found herself thinking about Naruko's kindness, her courage, and the way she always seemed to bring warmth wherever she went. Back in the present, Tamari watched as Naruko stepped outside with her parents. The three of them stood together, talking more openly than before. Naruko looked up at the sky, feeling hopeful. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone anymore. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the village in shades of gold, Naruko smiled. A new chapter had begun, filled with understanding, friendship, and the promise of brighter days ahead. She woke up the next morning in her small apartment, sunlight slipping gently through the curtains. Her head felt a little heavy, but she was safe. Sitting nearby was Baki-sensei, who explained kindly that a blonde-haired girl had carried her here with great care. When Tamari saw that same blonde girl again, her heart filled with a mix of emotions. The girl, Naruko Uzumaki, stood there with a bright, warm smile, as if nothing in the world could dim her kindness. Tamari felt ashamed of her past actions and the role she had played in the conflict. Yet Naruko had chosen compassion over anger. Overwhelmed, Tamari sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. But after a moment, she lifted her head, her eyes steady and sincere. "I will not have anyone else but you. Naruko Uzumaki," she said, her voice trembling but determined. 3 days later, Team Kurenai gathered in the Hokage's office. Minato stood behind his desk, doing his best to remain composed. He looked at the team with a calm expression, even though his thoughts kept drifting toward Naruko and how proud he was of her. "Team Kurenai," he began, his voice steady, "you will be heading out on an escort mission. Your client will arrive in the shopping district this afternoon." The team nodded respectfully and turned to leave. Naruko stepped out first, her energy bright as always, with her teammates following close behind. As the room grew quiet, Minato glanced down at the papers on his desk. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. "Enter," he said. The door opened, and Kakashi stepped inside. He looked a little uncertain but determined. "Yondaime-sama. I was hoping." He began, hesitating. Minato raised a hand gently, stopping him, not with anger, but with firm resolve. "Kakashi," he said, "if you've come to talk about forming old teams again, that path has already changed. Naruko is growing in her own way now, and I want her to keep moving forward." Kakashi nodded slowly, then reached into his pouch and pulled out a scroll. "I understand," he said quietly. "But I still want to help. This scroll contains techniques I've learned over the years. I thought maybe Naruko could learn from them too." Minato studied him for a moment. There was sincerity in Kakashi's voice, no pride, no excuses, just a wish to do better. After a pause, Minato's expression softened slightly. "What matters most," he said, "is that we support the next generation with honesty and care. If your intentions are true, then show it through your actions." Kakashi gave a small, grateful nod. "I will," he said. With that, he quietly left the room. Minato looked back down at the mission form on his desk, a thoughtful smile appearing on his face. It read: A-rank mission. Objective: protect the actress Yuki Fujikaze on her journey to the land of snow. He leaned back slightly, feeling hopeful. Somewhere out there, Naruko was already stepping into another adventure, one filled with new friendships, challenges, and chances to grow. And with her kind heart and bright spirit, she was sure to make the journey a meaningful one for everyone she met. Naruko sat waiting on a bench outside a lively movie theater, her bright eyes fixed on the colorful posters fluttering in the breeze. The film was about a brave princess, played by the famous Yuki Fujikaze. Naruko twirled a small training tool between her fingers, her impatience showing in the quick rhythm of her movements. Off to the side, Hinata watched Naruko quietly, her hands folded together, while Yakumo sketched softly in her notepad, capturing the bustling street scene. After a while, Naruko stopped twirling and sighed, placing the tool beside her. "We've been waiting a long time," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I hope our client is okay." Yakumo glanced up, her expression thoughtful. Hinata gave a small nod, hoping everything would turn out well. Just then, a sudden commotion filled the air. A horse galloped through the street, its rider holding on tightly as it moved too quickly through the crowd. Behind them followed several others, creating confusion among the people nearby. Naruko stood up at once, her expression focused. "I'll go help the rider," she said. "You too, please make sure everyone stays safe." With that, she leapt gracefully onto a nearby wall and dashed forward. Yakumo closed her eyes and began to draw quickly, using her special technique to create a calming illusion. To those rushing behind, it felt as though gentle trees had grown in their path, encouraging them to slow down and stop. Soon, the street became peaceful again. Hinata and Yakumo guided people to safety, making sure no one was frightened. Meanwhile, Naruko followed the horse through winding streets. She could see the rider struggling to control it. "Hold on," Naruko called, her voice clear and kind. She jumped forward and landed lightly beside the rider. The rider, Yuki, looked surprised. "Please, let me handle this," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Naruko shook her head gently. "We'll do it together," she replied. Carefully, she reached for the reins. Up ahead, she noticed a small child frozen in place, unsure of where to go. Thinking quickly, Naruko guided the reins firmly but gently. The horse slowed just in time, stopping safely before reaching the child. The little girl blinked in surprise before running back to her mother, who hugged her tightly. Yuki stepped down from the horse, clearly shaken. The children nearby recognized her and gathered around, asking for autographs with excitement. Naruko approached her, her tone much softer now. "That was really scary," she said. "But you're safe, and so is everyone else. Let's make sure we keep it that way." Yuki looked at her, surprised by the kindness in her voice. She nodded slowly. Before they could say more, Yuki quietly slipped away into the nearby streets. Naruko blinked, then smiled a little. "Looks like she still needs help," she said, setting off after her. After some searching, Naruko found Yuki resting inside a small, cozy cafe. The atmosphere was calm, filled with warm light and gentle music. Naruko walked in and sat across from her. "Running away won't solve things," she said gently. "But talking might." Yuki looked down at her cup, then back at Naruko. "I just felt overwhelmed," she admitted. "Everything happened so fast." Naruko nodded. "That's okay. Everyone feels that way sometimes. But you don't have to face it alone." Just then, Hinata, Yakumo, and their teacher Kurenai entered the cafe. They looked relieved to see everything peaceful. Kurenai smiled warmly. "There you are, Naruko. We were worried." Naruko scratched the back of her head sheepishly. "Sorry, sensei. I just wanted to make sure everything turned out all right." Yuki stood up and took a deep breath. "Thank you. All of you," she said. "I think I'm ready now." Naruko grinned brightly. "That's the spirit." Together, they stepped out into the sunlight, the earlier chaos now replaced with calm and hope. And as they walked forward, Naruko felt proud, not because she had chased someone down, but because she had helped someone find their courage again. In a quiet office filled with tall shelves and stacks of papers, Minato searched carefully, his golden hair falling slightly over his eyes as he leaned closer to the desk. He was looking for something very important, something that could help him speak from the heart to a girl named Naruko. Naruko was bright, strong, and full of spirit. She laughed loudly, dreamed boldly, and never gave up, even when things felt uncertain. Yet deep inside, she sometimes wondered where she truly belonged. Minato believed that a single piece of paper, a birth certificate, might help answer that question. But more than anything, he hoped it would help Naruko understand how deeply she was loved. Across the room, Kushina gently searched through a bookcase. Though her movements were quicker, her expression was thoughtful rather than frustrated. She paused now and then, brushing dust from old books, hoping to find a clue tucked between the pages. Minato sighed and sat down, closing his eyes for a moment. "It has to be here somewhere," he said quietly, determination steady in his voice. Kushina walked over and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We will find it," she said softly. "And when we do, we will tell her everything, with kindness." Just then, the door opened quickly, and Sasuke stepped inside. His eyes were serious, but there was a hint of uncertainty behind them. "I want to become stronger," he said. Minato looked at him calmly. "Strength is not only about skill," he replied. "It also comes from understanding yourself and caring for others." Kushina nodded. "And from patience," she added. Sasuke hesitated, then gave a small nod before stepping back out of the room, deep in thought. The office grew quiet again. Minato returned to his desk, running his fingers along its wooden surface. Suddenly, he noticed a faint line, a hidden seam. Curious, he gently pressed and pulled at the wood. With a soft crack, a small section lifted away, revealing a bundle of carefully hidden papers. Kushina leaned in beside him. "What is it?" she asked. Minato carefully picked up the top sheet. His eyes widened, and a warm smile spread across his face. "It is hers," he said. "Naruko's birth certificate." Kushina's eyes softened with emotion as she looked at the paper. "Then we can finally show her," she said. Minato nodded, but then paused, noticing there were other documents beneath it. His expression turned thoughtful, but he set those aside for later. Right now, what mattered most was Naruko. Meanwhile, far away by the gentle rocking of the sea, Naruko was helping someone in need. She carried Yuki carefully onto a boat, making sure she was comfortable. Though Naruko could be energetic and bold, she also had a quiet, caring side that showed in moments like this. Inside the cabin, everything was beautifully arranged. Soft blankets, polished wood, and a peaceful atmosphere made it feel safe and warm. Naruko gently placed Yuki on the bed and covered her with a soft sheet. She adjusted the blanket just right, making sure she would rest well. As Naruko turned to leave, something caught her eye, a delicate necklace resting near Yuki's collar. It shimmered faintly, as if it held a small secret of its own. Naruko tilted her head curiously but smiled. "Everyone has their own story," she whispered. Then she stepped outside, the sea breeze brushing against her face. She looked up at the sky, feeling a quiet sense of hope. Somewhere, answers were waiting for her. And soon, she would discover not just where she came from, but how deeply she was loved. Back in Konohagakure, 20 minutes later. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat quietly at his desk, turning the pages of an old journal. It held many memories from his long life, stories of difficult times, lessons learned, and hopes for a better future. He had just finished writing a new entry about recent events in the village when he paused, tapping the page thoughtfully. Lately, something had been troubling him. His thoughts felt scattered, like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. He adjusted his glasses and looked around the room, trying to remember where he had placed an important set of notes. Where did I put them?" he murmured softly. Just then, there was a sudden noise at the window. Several members of the Anbu appeared, not in a frightening way, but with serious, focused expressions. Their arrival was swift and orderly. Hiruzen blinked in surprise. "What is the meaning of this?" Before anyone could answer, the front door opened, and in stepped Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Both looked calm but determined, like parents who had something very important to say. Minato stepped forward. "Lord Third," he said respectfully, "we need to speak with you. There are some serious matters that must be addressed." Hiruzen studied their faces and slowly nodded. "I see. Then let us talk." The Anbu guided him, not roughly, but carefully, to a secure room where conversations could remain private. It was a quiet place, designed for important discussions rather than comfort. Inside, several trusted individuals were already waiting, including Inoiki Yamanaka and Ibiki Morino. Their expressions were thoughtful, not unkind. Minato placed a few documents on the table. "We've discovered decisions that may have caused harm, even if they were made with good intentions," he said gently. "We need to understand why." Hiruzen looked at the papers, his hands resting calmly in his lap. "Sometimes," he began slowly, "leaders make choices believing they are protecting everyone. But that does not always mean those choices were right." Kushina crossed her arms, her voice firm but caring. "What matters now is honesty. The village deserves that." One of the papers spoke about how a young girl named Naruko Uzumaki had been treated growing up. Instead of being supported and encouraged, she had often been left feeling lonely and misunderstood. Minato's voice softened. "Naruko is our daughter. She is kind, bright, and full of dreams. She deserved warmth and guidance, not distance." Hiruzen closed his eyes for a moment. "I thought I was protecting the village. But perhaps I forgot to protect her heart." The room fell quiet. "In the end," Inoiki said gently, "understanding the truth helps us grow. We cannot change the past, but we can choose what we do next." Hiruzen nodded slowly. "Then let this be a lesson, not just for me, but for all of us. A village is not only built on strength, but on kindness." Outside, the sun shone brightly over Konoha. Somewhere in the village, Naruko laughed as she trained, her spirit unbroken, her future still full of possibility. And though mistakes had been made, the people of Konoha were ready to learn, to grow, and to build a kinder tomorrow, together. Inoiki stepped quickly out of the room where he had just spoken with Sarutobi and Danzo. His face was tense, his thoughts swirling like a storm. He stopped in the hallway, placing a hand against the wall as he took a deep breath. "This isn't helping," he murmured to himself, trying to steady his heart. "I need to focus. One step at a time." The corridor seemed longer than usual, lined with many doors, each one holding memories of people he had known. Some brought comfort. Others, uncertainty. Then he paused. One door stood slightly open. That alone was unusual. Inoiki moved closer, curiosity and caution guiding his steps. As he read the name beside the door, his eyes widened. Orochimaru. He hesitated, knowing that whatever lay behind that door would not be simple. Still, he reached forward and gently pushed it open. Dash. Far away, on a ship gliding across calm waters, Naruko lay stretched out on the wooden deck, gazing at the sky. The soft rocking of the ship made her sigh. "I really don't like boats," she whispered. The journey to the snowy land ahead had been far from pleasant for her. The waves, the unfamiliar food, and the endless horizon, it all made her feel uneasy. Her stomach gave a small, unhappy rumble. "Oh no. Not again," she muttered, quickly sitting up. Naruko carefully made her way to the side of the ship, taking a few slow breaths until she felt a little better. Afterward, she leaned against the mast, watching the distant shoreline fade into the horizon. "I just want something simple to eat," she said softly. Determined, she headed below deck. The dim space didn't bother her, she had grown used to quiet and shadowy places. She searched through the supplies until she found what she needed, some bread, cheese, and a few small ingredients. "Perfect," she smiled, putting together a simple sandwich. Just as she was about to take a bite, a soft thud echoed nearby. Naruko froze. She turned her head slowly. A crate had tipped over, even though the ship was steady. "That's strange," she whispered. Carefully, she set her food aside and walked toward the sound. Her steps were light, her eyes observant. She noticed faint marks on the floor, footprints. "Someone's here," she thought. Following the trail, she moved quietly until it suddenly stopped at a wall. Naruko tilted her head. "That doesn't make sense." She focused for a moment, then gently released a small pulse of energy. The wall shimmered, and faded. Standing there was a familiar figure. He turned and gave a small, calm smile. "Oh. Hello, Naruko." Naruko blinked in surprise, lowering her guard slightly. "You really shouldn't sneak around like that," she said, though her voice carried more curiosity than anger. Dash. Back in the quiet hallway, Inoiki stepped into the memory within the room. The world around him shifted. He found himself witnessing a moment from the past, one filled with tension and heavy choices. Sarutobi stood facing Orochimaru. Their expressions were serious, their voices low but filled with meaning. "I want this to end," Sarutobi said firmly. "No more running. No more secrets." Orochimaru watched him carefully, then spoke in a calm, almost gentle tone. "What if I told you there was a way to see someone you deeply miss again?" Sarutobi's expression changed. His resolve wavered, just for a moment. Inoiki, watching from afar, felt a quiet concern grow in his heart. The memory did not show anger or harm, but something just as powerful, temptation, and the weight of longing. Sarutobi lowered his gaze, clearly torn between duty and the love he still carried. After a long silence, he spoke softly. "I only wish for peace." Orochimaru gave a small, unreadable smile. The moment lingered, then slowly faded. Dash. Inoiki opened his eyes, back in the present. The hallway was quiet again. He stood still for a moment, reflecting on what he had seen. Not everything was clear, but one thing was certain: understanding the past would be the key to protecting the future. Taking a steady breath, he turned and walked forward. There was still much to uncover. And somewhere out at sea, Naruko's journey was only just beginning. Inoiki stood very still, his thoughts swirling like leaves in a gentle breeze. Something about the situation felt deeply troubling, but instead of anger, he felt a quiet determination to understand the truth. He took a slow breath and turned toward the exit. There was enough for him to know that careful, thoughtful conversations would be needed to set things right in the village. With steady steps, he made his way out, already planning how to help restore harmony. Dash. Far from the village, Naruko sat on the wooden deck of a small building, holding a simple sandwich in her hands. The sky above her stretched wide and blue, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. She looked up as someone approached. "Kakashi Hatake," Naruko said, her voice calm but guarded. What are you doing here? Kakashi rubbed the back of his head, offering a small, uncertain smile. I was hoping I could spend some time with you. Maybe teach you a few things. Naruko's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in quiet hurt. You had time before, she said. Back when you were my teacher. Kakashi's smile faded. He could hear the sadness behind her words. Naruko stood up slowly. I'm not someone special, she continued. I've always been on my own. So I learned to rely on myself. Kakashi took a step forward. Naruko. You're not alone. She paused. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Naruko sighed softly and looked away, her grip on the sandwich loosening. I don't know if I believe that yet, she admitted. Kakashi reached into his pouch and carefully held out a scroll. You don't have to believe it right away, he said gently. But maybe. You can give this a chance. And maybe. Give me one too. Naruko looked at the scroll, then at Kakashi. Something in his voice felt different this time, honest and patient. After a moment, she took the scroll. I'll think about it, she said quietly. Kakashi nodded, a small but hopeful smile returning. Back in the village, Minato hurried into his office, his heart racing. Papers fluttered as he searched, his movements quick and restless. Kushina stepped inside, concern on her face. What's wrong? The document, Minato said, his voice shaking. Naruko's birth certificate, I can't find it. Kushina's eyes widened, and she joined him in searching. Together, they carefully looked through every stack, every drawer, every corner. At last, Kushina spotted a paper near the heater. She gently picked it up, her hands trembling. It was the certificate, but the writing had faded, the details blurred beyond recognition. The room grew quiet. Kushina held the paper close, tears slipping down her cheeks. I should have protected it better, she whispered. Minato placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, though his own eyes were filled with worry. For a moment, it felt like hope had slipped through their fingers. Then suddenly, Minato's expression changed. Wait, he said, straightening. There's another copy. Kushina looked up. I gave it to someone I trust, Minato continued, a small spark of hope returning to his voice. Hyashi Hyuga. Kushina's eyes filled with renewed determination. Then let's go. Without hesitation, they hurried out together, side by side. The path ahead was uncertain, but their hearts were steady. Somewhere out there was a chance to rebuild what had been lost, and to welcome Naruko home, not with sorrow, but with warmth, understanding, and love. Dear YouTube family. This is all for now. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, it truly means a lot and helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Until next time, stay inspired and keep exploring. Regards. Six Path Weeb.